Hello there, welcome to the Weird Record Club. This is the YouTube channel where we explore the records that get ignored elsewhere. Let's start again. Hello there, welcome to the Weird Record Club, the program where we explore the records that get ignored elsewhere. The weird, the wonderful, the psychedelic, the comic, the novelty, and the downright odd. Well, in this program, we're going to look at Doris Stokes and Bert Weedon. Yes, legendary guitarist Bert Weedon made a bizarre album with Britain's foremost 1970s medium, Doris Stokes. And here's the album, Welcome to My World. It's called In All Its Pinkness. Let's have a look at the back cover there, where you can see Doris in action. So let's have a look at this. Well, if you're of a certain age, you might remember Doris Stokes from radio and TV, and she was often in the newspapers. She was, as I said, Britain's foremost spiritualist medium. She was the medium to the stars. Among her clients were John Inman, Mr. Humphreys from Are You Being Served, of course, Freddie Starr, and the cast of Coronation Street, and a host of others. Now, Doris claimed that she had contacted the spirits of Diana Dawes and Tommy Cooper, and of course she had to get in touch with the spirit of Elvis Presley. We've actually made a video on the Elvis Presley séance. It wasn't with Doris Stokes, it was with another medium. You can see that bizarre séance record there. But we're going to look at another séance record today. So now this program was recorded over 3 nights. This record was recorded over 3 nights in the Dominion Theatre in London. And it consists of Doris with an audience. She gives a spiritualist reading to them, and interspersed with these we get some of the Bert Weedon's twangy guitar noodling. So Bert Weedon, of course, was a well-known guitarist from the 1930s onwards. And like me, if you were a guitarist of a certain age, you probably bought his book, Play in a Day, which I did when I was about 13 or 14, my first teach yourself guitar book. And of course, if you wanted to learn how to play the guitar and impress the girls, then of course, Bert Weedon, legendary guitarist, that must be the book for you, you know. And I learnt my first chord, C major, dring, from Bert, and then my second chord, well, G7, dring, and then I was ready to learn a song. And what song did Bert Weedon teach you? What was Bert Weedon's first song with which to impress all the girls? Well, it was Bobby Shafto, Bobby Bloody Shafto. Learned all those 2 chords just for that. And then what does Bert Weedon do? Then he goes and introduces a bar chord, F major. That's the 3rd chord. Oh, wow. Play in a Day was the title of the book. Well, think about the trade's description at Bert. So anyway, Bert Weedon, of course, was famous for his guitar sound, electric guitar sound, and it seems like he was a fan of Doris Stokes, and so that's what led to this unusual collaboration. So let's get into it now. When side 1, it starts off with Doris putting the audience at ease by telling a few gags. Do you want to hear them? Well, okay, here are some spiritualist jokes. 2 psychics meet in the supermarket, and one of them says, "You're all right, dearie, but how am I?" That was the first one. Now, the second one, the second joke she tells is that this bloke goes to a spiritualist medium and says, "I really want to know, do they play cricket in the afterlife?" And the medium says, "Well, okay, I'll go away, and at the next séance, I'll ask the ghosties if they do that." And so she does that, and then a few days later, the bloke comes to see her again, and he says, "So, what did you find out? Do they play cricket in the afterlife?" And the medium says, "Well, I've got some good news and some bad news." And the man says, "Well, what's the good news?" And she said, "Well, the good news is, yes, they do play cricket in the afterlife." And he said, "What's the bad news?" And she said, "Your team captain on Tuesday." So there we have it. Sorry, we've just got a new kitten called Ozzy, and he is causing all kinds of mischief and mayhem. When he gets up here, I'll show him to you. Come on, you little monkey. There you go. There, that's Ozzy. Look at that. Say hello, Ozzy. You're going to go to sleep on my lap now. Oh, let's see. What do you think, Ozzy? What do you think of that? Yeah, smells funny. And it does. It smells extremely fishy. So anyway, let's get back to Doris Stokes. Now, she starts the reading by calling out names and so on. And she's actually very accurate. She calls out names that you could never have guessed. She talks about Chalky White, who somebody in the audience recognizes. I thought that was a Jim Davidson character. But anyway, she calls out that. She calls out someone called Smudger Clark. Again, very specific names. She guesses people's phone numbers and addresses and all sorts. She's incredibly accurate. You know, she says to one woman in the audience, "You've just bought a new cooker, haven't you? And you've saved £135. Really specific information. How could she have known that? You know, was it the spirits? Well, we'll discuss how she maybe had done that in a few minutes. But that's how side one progresses now. That her style of talking is very engaging. She sounds a little bit like Frankie Howard. You know, when she's talking to the spirit, she's all says things like, "Oh no, I can't say that, love. Oh dearie. Oh, you don't say. Well, I can't tell him that, can I?" So she's "Oh, don't." So she does talk a little bit like sort of you imagine Frankie Howard doing. Anyway, that's side one. So she's very accurate on side one. Now, when we get to the other side, side two, her muse, her spirits seem to depart, because side two, she calls out a long succession of names and gets nowhere. No one in the audience recognizes her. And with increasing desperation, she calls out, "Does anyone recognize a David or a Dennis or a Dean or a Paul or a Paula or a Pauline or a Peter?" And she goes on, and it's appalling. It's embarrassing. It's an embarrassing display of mediumship that we get on side two. And it's quite hard to explain why she's so accurate on side one and what goes wrong on side two. And given that this was recorded over 3 nights, why did she pick these spectacular failures to put on the record? I don't know. Now, side two is when we get more of Bert Weedon and his pleasant noodlings. He plays along to the theme tune, "Welcome to My World." He also plays along while Doris narrates her life story. Now, Doris says that she was paralyzed with stress for a long time, paralyzed with stress and in hospital and on this cocktail of medication. And she had some kind of vision or some kind of religious experience where a voice from the spirit world told her to flush all her medicines down the toilet, which she did, and then, hey presto, she was cured. And then we get to, just when you thought it couldn't get any more maudlin, she gets to recite a poem over Bert Weedon's twanging about dead children. And that really is a low point on this very unpleasant album. So that leads to the question: how did Doris Stokes contact the dead? Well, if you're a spiritualist medium, there are 2 ways of contacting the dead, or at least appearing to. Cold reading and hot reading. Now, cold reading, that's when you call out random stuff, and when you get a hit, you jump on it. And that was what Doris was attempting to do when she said, "Oh, we've got a spirit here called David, Dennis, Dean, Paul, Paula, Pauline." So you keep throwing things out like, "Oh, there's a birthday coming up in a family somewhere. Oh, there's a special anniversary coming up." You know, and you keep going until, "Oh, it was a quick passing. Oh, no, it was a lingering passing." Well, you keep throwing things out until you get something. And you can rely on the fact that people will remember the hits and they'll forget the things that you got wrong. Unfortunately, this doesn't work on record because you can sit back and listen to it more objectively. Anyway, that's cold reading, and Doris does this on side 2, and it is an appallingly crap piece of fake mediumship. She should be ashamed of herself. Magicians like Darren Brown do that so much better. Now, the other way to contact the dead, supposedly, is hot reading. And that, I think, was Doris's preferred method. Hot reading is when instead of calling out random names out of the blue, you actually do some research on your clients. Now, what would happen with Doris was that she'd get loads and loads of letters from people who'd lost loved ones, who'd lost their children or lost their parents or their spouse. And these letters would be full of information that Doris could mine. And what Doris would do is that she would contact these people, write to them or phone them, find out information about their loved ones, and then she'd send them free tickets to her shows and place them in the front row. So when Doris was calling out these names like Chalky White and Smudger Clark and phone numbers and addresses, she knew that people in the audience would recognize them because she'd already got that information. Now, of course, Doris Stokes, if you ask me, like mediums generally, are fakes. And listening to it on record, it's a very tawdry affair, a bit like the Elvis Presley one here. I can imagine how it might be more impressive in a theatre setting where afterwards you're relying on your dodgy memory for what happened. But here on record, when you can listen to it, it's a very, very poor display of mediumship. Interestingly, there's a book, what's it called? Is it by Lamar Keane, I think it is. It's called The Psychic Mafia. Well worth looking at if you're interested in mediumship, because he gives the lowdown on how mediums work. And mediums divide themselves into what they call opens and closeds. And closed mediums either believe they're genuine or at least don't keep it a secret that they're fake. Now, open mediums, among each other, they all recognize that they're fake, which means they can share information about their clients and so on. Anyway, the tawdry world of spiritualist mediums is a very interesting topic, and I don't know whether there are any more records out there on this topic to explore, but if I find any, well, you can be sure this is the channel where we'll examine them. Now, Paul Daniels accused Doris of being a fake and challenged her to prove it, which unfortunately I don't think she ever took up her challenge. Of course, that comes in a long line of magicians, actually, stage magicians, actually challenging mediums such as Doris Stokes or supposed psychics like Uri Geller to demonstrate their powers. Now, I suppose the other thing to think about, I'm just consulting my notes, is that the secretary of the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain said, of course, Doris Stokes isn't a fake. She's not clever enough to trick anyone. And that is a thing that a lot of mediums would do. They pretend to be stupid. And so everyone would think, well, she can't possibly be fooling us. Well, she was. Anyway, that was Doris Stokes' bizarre album with Bert Weedon, Welcome to My World. So that leaves us with the bizarre question, you're okay, but how am I? See you next time. Say bye-bye, Ozzy.